What is up, y'all? What's good? It's your girl Jice with the Black Business Initiative. We're going to talk a little bit about anti-Blackness today, just because I'm sick of hearing about it. Um, So while I wait for y'all to come on in, of course, I'm going to put out a few of my plugs. Y'all know what to do. Go to the BlackAgenda on tour. I'm going to talk a little bit about Denver. It was a really great experience, even though y'all know we weren't initially intending to come to Denver, and we still came out here. And there we go. Denver wasn't on the initial tour, but we came out here anyway. And I think it turned out pretty good. So hopefully that takes down a little bit of my glare. Sorry, y'all. Here we go. At any rate, what is up, y'all? What is up? What is up? So, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Denver. That was pretty dope. And but yeah, so make sure that you head over to the BlackAgenda on tour. We're headed to Chicago next. That's what's coming up. And like I said, I'm gonna give a couple of highlights from Denver, but it was looking pretty good. So I'm excited about that. To tell you a little bit about that. Don't forget to text 484848. Text BlackAgenda to 484848 to stay up to date with our updates and everything. And I want to do a real quick shout out to my newest top level Patreon member, Edward Williams. Thank you for joining me. So what's up, y'all? So I want to talk a little bit about Denver because I felt like it was, a really great experience. So like I mentioned, we weren't initially coming to Denver, right? That's the case. We weren't initially coming to Denver for all types of reasons, but because we were here in Denver and, we have our ties are here, our roots are here. We had a lot of folks that were asking for us to come on into Denver. So we did, and it was fantastic. For sure, Denver showed up, showed out. We were at the Casbah, and it's always interesting the way that we, perceive things. But we got a lot of questions about the Casbah. Why are we there at the Casbah? Well, we were there because the Casbah was Black owned. But we had standing room only at the end of the day. It was a packed house, and the speakers were great. The local speakers, y'all know we have different local speakers in all of the local communities, in addition to, of course, my girl Michi X, myself, David Banner, Shay J. We had some local speakers that were here, and they were amazing. And so the love that was in the room, I think, was great. And when I tell you that we had a little bit of everybody in the room, it was a little bit of everybody in the room. We had students, we had students, we had everyday community members, we had activists, we had artists, we had politicians that got there. They did come down. We also had folks that had opposing views, right? Like very much in the public space, opposing views. And so that was what was up. Like all these people came together. We had some people who were like, listen, I don't like what y'all are doing. And over time, as they kept hearing about it, they still came down. They still, showed up to support. We had Omar Montgomery, who is running for mayor in Aurora, show up. We had the mayor of Denver, Mayor Hancock. He did not physically show up, but he sent some of his people down, as well as he sponsored tickets for the community to be able to get in. And if you're here in Denver, it was a very contentious Denver race. So I think that was, a good extension of his hand to say, I understand, that the community, how the community is feeling right now. And this is a conversation around Black unity. And so he extended that. And so I can appreciate that. And so there's a lot of things that had just been kind of going on. But I will tell you that the energy in the room was just so great. What's up, y'all? What's up? What's up? Peace. And thank you for coming on in. So it was just a great experience. Things did not run necessarily on the back end as smoothly as we wanted it to, but once things got off the ground, it was like it didn't even matter anymore. Like just the room and the atmosphere and the energy was just so great, right? And ultimately that's a lot of what we're talking about, is we have to get into a space where a lot of these, smaller issues, or I don't want to like belittle or downplay what people's issues are, but when we really start getting into what Black people are facing on an everyday basis, what we experience and things like that, we begin to recognize how petty some of these conversations that we have are, some of these beefs that we have that are really just petty, right? And so, we're constantly saying we don't have to like each other. We don't have to all get along. We don't have to have this fake, nuanced version of unity. but there are times and places where it matters. And what I saw on this Saturday was a time and a place that it mattered. And to Denver's credit, we showed up and we showed out. So I think that was just super dope. But I just want to come back and throw that out there. There are a few of the clips. Y'all know some of the main things are not being pushed out or streamed, but there, you can catch some of the artists that performed. You can catch some of the local speakers that spoke and things of that sort. So that's what's up. So anyway, I just want to go ahead and, kind of do a little quick recap because we are headed to Chicago. So y'all make sure y'all share this information out to your people in Chicago, push this information out and let them know that we're coming. We're coming in like a week. It's not a long time. So go and get your ticket. Like I say, you can go to the BlackAgendaOnTour.com and so make sure that you do that. And I want to thank you guys for those who have been donating to the Black Agenda. Every penny helps to make this thing happen. I don't think that Michi and I have spoken enough about the fact that, this has really not had any major sponsors. This has been funded out of our own pockets and the love and the purpose that that she has and the vision that she has and the purpose that I have and the vision that I have and our love for our community and our love for our children and our future generations, right? So that's where this is really coming from. And so for those of you that have gone over and have made a donation to help us support the operations and help us to support this, I just want to say thank you for me, right? So I appreciate you. I appreciate all of that. My last little shout out here is to make sure that I let you know about my grind with Jice. My coaching is closed. I have all the clients that I can take for right now. It will open back up in the fall. So if you did want to coach with me and you didn't get a chance to get on board, don't worry, I open back up in the fall. But right now, my personal one-on-one coaching roster is closed. But you can still connect with me at Patreon and Grind with Jice. And then I'm going to have a group coaching program that's getting ready to drop here real soon. And that program is something that you can get involved in, especially if you're somebody who is really feeling oftentimes like you're not productive. I get onto this space and I talk a lot about what's going on in the Black community and the way that we think in the Black community, but really a lot of what I do is what is your goal? What is your passion? And how do you reach that goal? Because oftentimes we don't reach our goals. So if you're a person who has found that continuously you're setting a goal for yourself and you're not reaching that goal, if it gets frustrating, you give up, you feel like you have a passion or a purpose and you just can't seem to get that started, that is something that I can help with. So you can, feel free to hit me up and I'll direct you however I can. So at any rate, all right, y'all, let's talk about this. Anti-Blackness. What is up, y'all? What is up? Thank you for coming in. Thank you. I appreciate that. Black wealth is Black power. Yes, it is. All right. So let's talk about this anti-Blackness and Black people, right? This is something I'll be honest. I actually don't spend a lot of time listening to Black YouTubers. I don't consider myself to be a Black YouTuber by any means. I am a business coach. I am a professional. I'm a real estate investor. I am the founder and the CEO of an organization that helps Black-owned businesses get started, grow, and scale. That's who I am. That's what I do. I am a mom. I'm a homeschooling mother. On top of that, right? So I'm a community member. I'm an activist. If you ever go to my websites, my pages, that's how I describe myself, right? My bio is like mother, activist, world traveler, investor, right? That is who I am. But I think it's important that, well, let me back up. I want to just make sure to say I don't go around listening to a lot of Black YouTubers often because the way that we talk and the way that we see things is just oftentimes so detrimental. And it gets to be this place where we're not really being filled with anything that is profound, anything that's life-changing, anything that can alter our behavior or the way that we think, anything that can help us heal, anything that can really, help us take these next steps, right? Oftentimes I hear things that are kind of fueling gossip or fueling the flames, fueling a lot of anger and aggression, but not necessarily directed towards any solutions, right? How do we what do we do? What do we, what do we do with all that anger? What do we do with all that aggression? What do we do with all that depression? What do we do with all that sadness, right? And so the more that I, hear people, like for me, it just gets to be too much. It's not really the lane that I want to be in. I spend a lot more time in a mindset space. I spend a lot more time in business development. That's kind of where I spend my time, is how I'm going to be better, how I'm going to build legacy, how I'm going to become an expert in an area, or build upon or improve my expertise, and all of those things, right? So that's kind of where I tend to spend a lot of my time. But when I do come around to some of these Black YouTubers, some of them have, bigger names, right? A Roland Martin, y'all know Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, um, you know, uh, you had, what's her girl, Cynthia G, right? When we come around to some of these bigger named Black YouTubers, and there's a whole lot more. I'm literally just naming a couple. Like that's not an extensive list, and this is not aimed specifically at them or anything. I'm just listing Black YouTubers. I find that it's difficult sometimes to find that positive and that empowerment piece, but what I do find a lot of is anti-Blackness, and it comes in a lot of different forms. It doesn't always come in the form of, I hate Black people. Like, that's not where it comes. It comes in the form of things like colorisms, or comparing experiences, or being accepted in our own communities, right? It comes from having a real lack of understanding of nationality versus race versus like ethnicity or culture and things of that sort. It comes from those types of spaces. And so I wanted to just break down a little bit of that. And I want to start off with colorism, and which ties directly into experience. But this is anti-Blackness inside of the Black community. This is us being against ourselves, and really we're playing ourselves when we do this, right? We have to begin to understand that colorism is, well, first of all, let's back up and say this about color with Black folks, okay? Forget about America, Europe, wherever, right? If you go back all the way to Africa and the 53 or 54, I think it's 54 countries that exist in Africa, and you start going throughout the entire continent, you're going to find all the phenotypes that exist there. Not necessarily that we have mixed and mingled with white folks, not that we have mixed and mingled necessarily with anyone. We are the original people. And as the original people, all those phenotypes exist out of us, right? And then let me state that people, right? Because there's really like two different types of humans. There's like, our human species, and then there's the Neanderthal species. And that's not scientifically correct, but I think y'all get what I'm saying, right? And so, so when we break it back down to like the actual human species coming from Africa, yes, you get into the interior of Africa, and we are, Black as the soil, right? And we're beautiful. But you can go to other places and other spaces in Africa, and you find all types of phenotypes, different hair textures, different eye colors, different skin tones, all of that. We create the whole rainbow, right? Albinoism, where we lack that melanin. We have freckles, we have red hair, we have blonde hair, we have blue eyes, we have gray eyes, we have green eyes. All of those things can be found inside of us even before the rape of our people by violent white races. So I think it's important for us to begin to understand that all those phenotypes really trace back to us. And the idea that you being so dark that that's a problem, right? We've heard those things, Black as hell, you so Black, you blue, right? Or you're purple, whatever the case might be, all the way to you can pass and you're so white that you're not Black enough. All of those sentiments across the board and anything in between, all that shit is anti-Blackness, right? And so we have to be acknowledged within ourselves that that's a space and a place that we really have to start cutting out. Cut it out when you're joking, cut it out in your families, cut it out with, what grandma says, what grandpa says, what uncle said, none of that is helpful to the overall narrative of presenting unity, because those things become very harmful. I have a homegirl named, her stage name is Mahogany. Kenya Fashaw, her stage name is Mahogany. She did a play called Colorism. And in that play, she basically took someone who was, very dark skinned, someone who was very light skinned, and someone who was in between, and had this, this basically like monologue conversation around what their experiences are, right? And really the reality of it is that we're harming ourselves across the board, right? We're harming ourselves across the board. You have people who are very light skinned who get told you're not black enough. You don't have a place here, inside of our community, right? You're always trying to figure out what somebody is mixed with. My ex-husband was lighter than me, more yellow than me, and I met both his parents. Both his parents were light. I met at least three of his grandparents. One of them is dark skinned, two of them are light skinned. I mean, we have it's so mixed up and convoluted, right? But he can't trace back to anything but black on black on black on black. He's just fucking light. So it's interesting to me the way that we, that the way that we see that, right? Obviously, I'm obviously a light skinned black person. I've gotten that bullshit my whole life, right? But then you move on and you find that you got people who are very dark skinned, and then we give them a lot of hell too. You black as hell, you black like an African, you're the color of dirt, you're darkness, you turn off the light, I can't even see you, I don't see nothing but your teeth, right? They get that same stuff too. And so I think that is interesting because, and I love the campaign, my black is beautiful, and black girl magic, and all these things where people are beginning to embrace that. But we have to spread that message further and further along, because the reality of it is that people are still very much rooted in colorism, and that's going to tie right on into the experiences, right? So you have some black people who are always around black people. They're never really around anybody but black people. Maybe they go a few places here or there. Maybe they go into a school system and have some white teachers. Maybe they go to work and they have a white boss. But by and large, they live in a black community. And although they get the fact that there are, violent white racists and that these things exist, the people who have hurt and damaged them the most are other black people, because other black people have told them that they were ugly, that their hair was nappy. Other black people have told them that their skin wasn't beautiful. Other black people have told them that they wasn't shit because of how dark they are, how big they are, how small they are. You're not black. You're too skinny. You ain't got no ass, right? Or you're so big. Whatever, right? You get what I'm saying. It's just it just gets to be too much. Like, we spend time tearing down each other. And I'm not saying that this is just a black thing, but it's a little bit harder to see across white people, because white people are just fucking white, right? I mean, they're not like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can find some of them that are funny colored. There's the orange guy, but usually it's some like unnatural thing. They suck at tanning, or they've gotten sunburned, or maybe they have a little Italian in them, so they're maybe a little darker. But by and large, white people are just white. So they don't really face the same types of colorisms that we face, despite whether they want to talk, despite whether they want to talk about other features that exist, right? But we will say our eyes are too slanted, they too wide, your lips is too big, your nose is too, wide, or whatever, right? And so it just gets to be too much, right? It's just too much. And so the same thing where, and I can't speak on what dark skinned people go through, but I have friends who are dark skinned who tell me the types of stuff that they go through, right? Then on my end, I've always been called too yellow, too light skinned. Every now and again, when I get a tan, you may call me red, but at the end of the day, for the most part, I get called yellow, I get called light skin, I get called half breed, even though I'm not half breed. And if I was, I don't see what difference that would make. I get called, pea colored and banana and all types of stupid stuff, right? And so for me, I'm at a place where, okay, well, whatever, like that affected me as a child. I feel like, and maybe not, because we all have trauma, right? But I feel like I've gotten over the majority of that trauma as a kid growing up, and not having to worry about that. Those are not things that bother me now, right? So you mentioning my skinnedness, my light skin, to me does not bother me. But it does bother some other people, right? Especially when we try to equate their blackness to their skin tone. How black are you, right? So some of us is too black, some of us ain't black enough. Then you got those folks in the middle, and I really don't know. Some people love their, the middle of the road or whatever, but then you start breaking them down by what their experiences are, or, you know, again, like what their body type looks like, right? So I have a friend who she's very brown. She's brown skin. She's not light skin. She's not dark skin. She's brown skin. But then she has very, very, very curly hair. So of course, because her hair is not, you know, 4C hair, now she's also not black enough, right? It's like, come on. So we need to be able to recognize and call out anti-Black behavior inside of our own communities. That's anti-Black behavior. That shit needs to stop. And we have to begin to recognize that we are causing our own people additional trauma and experiences that really aren't necessary. I have to go through this now with my children because my children are very light skinned, right? And then I have one daughter. She's light skin, but she has a kinkier texture hair than say my youngest daughter, who's very light skinned, and she has a curlier texture hair, right? And so so now it's it's these conversations around hair textures. Like, our hair textures are all different types. Matter of fact, you have multiple hair textures sitting on the same head, right? The middle of my head is not the same hair texture as the outside of my hair. So it's always interesting to me, like me and my sister have the same mother and father, and we have two completely different hair textures. And we're we're same mom, same dad, right? So these types of anti-Black, this type of anti-Black rhetoric that's coming from our own people, that is harming our own people. We have to see it, we have to name it, and then we have to cut it. And sometimes that means having a tough conversation, even with your grandmother. Sometimes it means having a tough conversation, even with your mother, right? Or your father, or your auntie, or your uncle, and tell them, like, stop talking to my children like that. Don't talk to me that way. Don't address me in that manner. We have to begin to check ourselves. My kid's father, he makes all these jokes. My kid's father, he has his other kid's mother, she's dark skinned. He's constantly calling his son black as hell. I don't like that. And I tell him, like, why are you constantly telling him that he's black as hell? Very rarely is he doing it in an uplifting way. They'll joke, they'll laugh, but I'm telling him, you really don't know what you're doing to his self-esteem when you're constantly pointing out that he's black as hell. And you're not saying this like his black as hell mom, you saying this like his light-skinned dad, calling him black as hell. And he can see that there's a contrast between you. So now he may be thinking it's something wrong with him because he doesn't look like you. That's a problem, right? And so I'm not saying that every time we call it out on somebody, they're going to change their behavior, because I can tell you what, so far it ain't changed none of his behavior. But he knows that shit's not acceptable to me. I'm not going to promote or allow for a continuous anti-Black conversation to happen around me. So we have to get to that place where we're able to see it, name it, call it out, correct the behavior as much as possible, or at least make people very uncomfortable to continue that type of behavior around you, because they know that you're not down for that shit, right? Because we're all now talking about unity. We're all talking about how we come together so that we can all move ourselves forward. That's what the conversation is. And if you're not adding to that conversation, then you're going to feel uncomfortable around me when we're talking about Black folks. You said, as long as you hug and squeeze after any disagreements, we can move forward positively. Kind of. I mean, you can let somebody know that you're playing, but I just feel like, I feel like that I feel like it's not okay. So feel free to disagree with me. But at the end of the day, that narrative is very harmful to our community. And I think we've seen that, I think we have seen that over time, right? Because both light skin and dark skin people have very negative connotations with their skin tone. So what's the right skin tone? What's the right skin tone to be Black? Like, I think that's a ridiculous conversation, the right skin tone to be Black. And when we recognize that that all of our phenotypes can be found inside of Africa, where we originate from, then it becomes a null and void point, and it becomes even more ridiculous to have that conversation. There is no right skin tone of Black. So the next thing I want to talk about is experiences. This one is something that I get and I'm gonna use him because I'm also gonna tie in ADOS to this. So, when Antonio Moore talks a lot about the experiences of what it means to be ADOS, and I think that that's also a harmful narrative. There are certain experiences that can be tied directly to American descendants of slavery, but those experiences are very broad. And I don't think that you can attach only being poor or growing up in a violent, poor, destitute type of a situation and make that the sole ADOS type of experience, right? There are a lot of experiences that encompass what it means to be ADOS. And that's because we are a broad people. And so we can talk about what the majority of us are, but the majority is not all encompassing. And so being ADO, like you can't cut out being ADOS. You're either a descendant of American slavery or you're not a descendant of American slavery. And if you are a descendant of American slavery, that means that like that term can be all encompassing, right? But the experience of someone who is ADOS is not necessarily all encompassing. And so I think to his credit and to his point, what he is fighting for is to highlight what it looks like to be the average American descendant of slavery, but you can't negate the experiences of others who are American descendants of slavery. Just as an example, my father is part of the baby boomers, right? And I know he speaks specifically to having access to baby boomer money or having access to baby boomer, resources and things of that sort. And I think it's very important to recognize that my father grew up as an American descendant of slavery in Houston, Texas, and just so happened to have been born in an era that afforded him a certain uh, uh, opportunity that maybe doesn't exist for Gen X and millennials today. But everyone of his generation did not have access to that baby boomer experience. They did not take advantage of. Matter of fact, most in his family did not. My father had to leave Houston, Texas, to gain some of the access to the experiences that he was able to get. Although he is somewhere in the middle of 15 kids, and all 15 of those kids do not have that same experience or were not afforded those same opportunities because he sought opportunity. And that's oftentimes the difference between a lot of us is that many of us are not seeking opportunity. Many of us don't know opportunity even exists. Matter of fact, some of the opportunity that he experienced, he stumbled upon. But I think it's very important for us to just begin to recognize that the conversation around ADOS, being an American descendant of slavery, is not to alienate us or divide us from the rest of Blackness in America. ADOS is a specific designation in order to make a reparations claim. Now, I believe that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell are very, very specific about that. They're very specific about that. This is not to pull away from our African immigrants. This is not to have dissension between people who are African American versus people who are African American, who are American descendants of slavery. This is not that. And so you have some people who are, hashtagging ADOS, and they're doing all types of like, they're over here like, American pride, right? Waving American flags and making, and if you want to wave an American flag, wave an American flag. I'm gonna look at you kind of crazy for waving an American flag in this type of climate, in this type of environment. If you were born here in America, your nationality is American. That is what it is. But if we don't have a distinct understanding of what race and nationality and the difference between race and nationality is, then what are we really talking about, right? Your race is basically what you look like. You're white, you're black, you're Asian, you're Hispanic. That's based off of what you appear to be. That's a race. That's why when you say you have a black Latino or a black Latina, that is saying that their race looks like they are black. When we're talking about nationality, that's where you're from. So yes, American descendants of slavery are Americans. because you were born on American soil, which is how you have people who are Americans but are not American descendants of slavery. There is a difference. Why they keep talking about Kamala Harris and Barack Obama as not having an ADOS experience, that's absolutely true. They are not ADOS. They have an African American experience, which is traumatizing in and of itself. If you are Black here on American soil, you have a fucking traumatizing ass existence. However, Barack Obama has a white mom and an African father. He has no ties to American slavery. Kamala Harris has a Jamaican mother and an Indian father. She has ties to Jamaican slavery. Matter of fact, if she wanted to have a claim, her mother's claim would be for probably to the British in Jamaica. That would be her mother's claim for reparations from the British to Jamaicans for slavery in Jamaica. So it's about making a reparations claim, not to separate us as a Black people. That's still anti-Blackness. And so here's what I don't like. Now, Barack Obama has never denied his Blackness. I think that there are places where Kamala Harris has not necessarily embraced her Blackness. Right? I have an issue with that. There was a woman out here who was running for Denver mayor, and part of my issue with her, now mind you, first of all, every time I've met her, she's been fabulous, right? When I have heard her speak, she was brilliant. But every time that I heard her speak, prior to wanting to run for mayor, she was basically speaking to the Latin community. So when she went to run for mayor, all of a sudden she was Black. See, I have a problem with that. She was always Black. She just didn't acknowledge or accept or make her Blackness a part of her narrative. So don't try and make your Blackness a part of your narrative because you want to run for office, right? So I would agree, Desha. Like, I don't think that they are for Black people, but Black people cannot say that they are not Black. They are not ADOS, so they are not entitled to a reparations claim by American descendants of slavery, but they are Black. And so I think we have to stop isolating people by their Blackness or how much we perceive their Blackness, because those people have a unique experience as well that is not a positive experience. Who can actually imagine now Barack Obama can talk about, how great his actual family, like his mother, his grandparents were, but think about being a Black man growing up in an all-white family in the 50s. I would just imagine that there's a certain level of trauma that comes with that. He is not ADOS. I think we can all agree, because ADOS means that he is an American descendant of slavery, which he is not. But he's still a Black man who grew up in America. He has grown up with a different experience because he grew up with a white family that tried to surround him with love and kind of shield him from some of the hatred that certainly came from the outside world, right? Imagine being somebody like Kamala Harris growing up, which she largely grew up in Canada, but Canada has racism, in case we didn't know, just in case we didn't know. But just imagine being somebody who's biracial in a time where it's not popular to be biracial. Right now, it's kind of popular. Like, you got Black folks trying to create biracial babies on purpose, right? And it's being pushed in the media. Like, it's popular to be biracial today, right? I'm not saying that that's what it should be, but I'm just like, let's acknowledge all media outlets are showing biracial children. It's cute. It's trendy. You should just go and get you a white woman, or go get you a white man, go get you an Asian, go get you a Latino, right? Like, go get those things. That's what's popular. That's what they're showing out in the media today. But 50 years ago, it was not popular at all. And so I think that sometimes when we find Black people, in particular, Black people of mixed race, who are angry towards the Black community, they're angry because they're not accepted in the white community. They're not accepted in the Black community. They have no real identity. They have no real place to belong. So when we see somebody like Kamala Harris and say she's not for Black people, she probably ain't. Black people probably really didn't accept her by and large because she wasn't Black enough, because her hair texture is different, because she's light skinned. I mean, let's just call it out for what it is. That might be a painful thing. Like, that's why we talk here amongst ourselves, Black people to Black people, because white people can't come in and tell us what it is that we've done to each other. We have to acknowledge what we've done to each other. That's a painful experience that you don't fit in anywhere. She doesn't fit in with the Indians. She doesn't fit in with the Black folks. Where the fuck does she fit? And I'm not defending Kamala Harris. I'm just using her as an example because it's a name that everybody knows. It's a face you can place. You know exactly what she looks like, so you can identify what I'm saying, right? I'm not defending her actions. I'm not defending her placing Black folks in jail with her bullshit ass policies that she had over in California. I'm not defending any of that. I'm just talking about being Black. Just being Black, what it means to be Black in America. We're mixed up. We're hurt people. We all carry trauma inside of our DNA. And so do we think that she doesn't carry trauma? Do we think Jamaicans don't carry trauma? You don't think Jamaicans have post-traumatic slave syndrome? Or you think that's an American only experience? Because it's not. It's not. Right? So if trauma is passed through our DNA, you don't think Kamala Harris's mother, who's Jamaican, who's a Jamaican descendant of slavery, had trauma passed on through her DNA to her daughter? Maybe anything. I don't know. And then when you couple that with the fact that she's not accepted anywhere, right? She's not accepted anywhere. So yeah, there's Black people who grow up hating Black people. We grow up hating ourselves. So, part of what I like about the ADOS claim is that there needs to be therapy involved because we all experience post-traumatic slave syndrome somewhere, right? Most of us, or we just experience violent white racism, right? You got people now who don't like. I claim ADOS. That's what I am. I get this, right? But I get it as a reparations claim, not to separate me, brothers and sisters who have also been exposed and have experienced violent white racism. Or did we think that only took place here on American soil? The diaspora was a triangle across the sea. Fought. Well, I heard it that her mom was Jamaican, but maybe her dad was Jamaican. Got it. But I think we can get the point that she's not accepted anywhere. Biracial children have a hard time finding acceptance in either community. That was the point, right? And so if you find a biracial person or a Black person who hates being Black or who doesn't like Black people, it's most likely because they have never experienced a place where they belong. And Black people talk shit about them. Okay, I'm gonna have somebody have to fact check whether her dad's family was Jamaican Black slaveholders. That's not how I've ever heard it. I've heard that they were Black Jamaicans. Somebody fact check that. But nevertheless, I'm not about to get on I'm not about to stay anymore on Kamala Harris because my point is not about her. My point was just simply about biracial Black people, and then also recognizing that the traumas that we face here in America are not exclusive to America. The reason why we need an ADOS designation, or why we need a designation, is for a reparations claim. It's to decide and determine, or to make a determination as to who is owed by America. Because I can tell you, the France owe reparations. The British owe reparations. There's a lot of countries rather, who owe reparations. America's one of them. So if you're an American descendant of slavery, you're owed reparations from this country. If you were over in Jamaica or Haiti, or if you were over in South America in Brazil, like, you're owed reparations from those places or from the people who were controlling those places. So ADOS is not, or should not be here to separate us. It's really just a designation for our legal claim. All the rest of that bullshit is just anti-Blackness. And we have practiced that for a long time. We have practiced colorism. We have practiced those experiences, right? I remember, like I said, I grew up in East Oakland, right? And for a minute, I was going to a private school. I remember that my experience in private school and the way that I spoke now made me less Black. So not only was I light-skinned, but now I was light-skinned and I spoke proper English. Clearly, I can't be Black. Like, we equate our experiences in an anti-Black way. I'm gonna look up that article. Thank you for dropping that article, so I can go and read and make sure that I know that I understand or see what that is. So I will go back to that those art. I see two articles. her father admits to owning slaves. Okay, cool. So I just want to fact check that because that wasn't something that I heard, right? And I'll be honest, I don't spend a lot of time following Kamala, which is maybe why I said that I had it the other way around. I thought her mother was Jamaican and I thought her father was Indian. But thank you for setting that straight. And I'm gonna go back and read those. But yeah, so we have to get past the colors and we have to get past those experiences, and get to a place of being accepted, right? So we have to begin to recognize that when we are not accepted by our own people, absolutely you can grow hate and frustration for your own people. Sometimes in some people's experiences, not everyone's experiences. In some people's experiences, you can feel more hatred from your own people than you can from the outside community, because maybe out there it's a little more subtle, but at home, in your own house, in your own neighborhood, it's very blatant, right? And so you feel that anger and that aggression towards our own people. And we know how we got there. We know why we've been there. Those things have been, they have been programmed inside of us, right? It's a mental conditioning. That's why I talked about white supremacy being on autopilot, right? Because violent white racists have now programmed us to basically eat each other up, right? We're eating our own selves up. They don't even have to do anything anymore. Right? A white person never have to call black person nigger again, because we gonna do enough tearing down of ourselves to cause damage to ourselves that they don't even look like the enemy anymore. Now we look like the enemy to each other. Now I don't like you and you don't like me, even though they're the ones that have caused the harm. But we so dead set on each other, we don't even recognize anymore who has caused us the harm, right? That's why I say, if y'all want to go back and look at that, when I said, white supremacy on autopilot, that's what it is. And all of this anti-blackness that comes from black people is a part of that mental conditioning of white supremacy being on autopilot. Yeah, we absolutely need to know our history. We need to know our history. We need to understand those countries and continents. You might not be able to pinpoint which one that you came from, but you need to understand the culture, and the history of what it looked like to be over there. There's a bunch of different cultures over there. There's a bunch of different nationalities that exist over there. There's a bunch of different ways that we live. I love how people talk about, an African way to be. There's 54 different countries. It hasn't always been 54 different countries. Those lines and territories have shifted, right? So we oftentimes we sometimes forget what it's like to just have a people problem. Territory, war, power, control, those are people problems. Africa was not a utopia. Those are people problems. But there was a culture in how we are and how we were, in our trade, in our business dealings, in the way that we interacted, and basically having a code, right? And it wasn't like the code that you had to have over here, but there's just codes. There's codes all over. There's codes of war, right? There's a way that we interact. There's street codes. There's familial codes, right? So there were codes that happened over there as things took place, right? A value system. Thank you. The Dominican Republic is an island of mixed races of black folks, but they belittle the black like it's a shameful thing to be black. Yeah. Well, that's anti-blackness, right? So again, that's a mental conditioning. That's anti-blackness. We just need to recognize it. So I guess, really we need to understand, and I'm just really, I'm putting this out here because my call to action, my call to you is to see it, begin to recognize when black folks are being anti-black, call that out, and cease it, right? And it doesn't have to be called out in a way like you ain't shit because you're being anti-black. It's like, yo, bruh, let me holler at you for a second. Do you see how that's a harmful narrative? Do you see how maybe you're hurting your sister, or do you see how you're hurting your brother? And what you'll most likely find is they are doing that out of their own hurt. Hurt is a very cyclical thing. I was hurt. Now I hurt you. You were hurt. Now you hurt them. They were hurt. Now they hurt the next person. Right. And it's very cyclical because we don't have that healing. And so, again, I say, if you haven't read ADOS 101, go to ADOS101.com. Take a look at the reparations claim that they're talking about, because they are including in there that conversation around mental health and around needing, therapy and things of that sort. And I think that's right on. Like, we need to have that readily available, right? And there's a lot of different ways to have therapy. I was talking with a good friend of mine, Danielle Schutz, last night, and we were just kind of talking about the different types of therapies that exist. Because if you're an intellect like myself, having like that conversation, having a talk with a therapist may not always be the right way for you to go, because I have already had all them conversations in my head, right? We didn't, look, me and Jice then talk this whole thing out, all the scenarios, all the things played out. So me going to a therapist in that sense sometimes isn't helpful. But we have to recognize there are different types of therapies that exist out there. And all of them don't mean that you sit on a couch and talk to a shrink, right? But we have to begin to work through those traumas because they come out in so many ways. They come out in all these triggers and egos and depression and anger. This is where all of those traumas just like seep out of our skin. We can't help them even if we wanted to. Hollywood sellouts are confusing our communities. You mean by the propaganda? I appreciate you, sis. I think, are you, wait, Janaya, am I saying that right? Janaya? I appreciate you. Um, if you're talking about if you're saying Hollywood sellouts are confusing our communities through like propaganda, like I've already told y'all, like I'm very clear about the things that I put in. I watch certain shows, right? But I watch it on my time, right? I watch things on my time. I don't have news just coming into me. There was I had a meeting today with a sister that I'm working to collaborate with. She's dynamic, and I still feel like I'm about to mess it up. Jaina. Jaina. Am I saying that right? Jaina? My bad. I want you to tell me now because my name is Jicelyn. Like I say Jice, but my name has Lyn on the end, Jicelyn. And let me just tell you now, for whatever reason, people get Jice, but when I say Jicelyn, it's like psh, nobody gets it. So I really be trying to understand. I mean, pronounce people's right names right. Jaina. Okay, thank you. um, but yeah, so I want, this sister was just telling me about two men who were chopped up and who were like chopped up and tied to bricks. Have y'all heard about this? Have y'all heard about this? Because it really like disturbs me, right? And I was like, I don't even want to see it. But anyway, my point in that is I don't watch a lot of news. I try to stay away. Maybe that's why I know enough about Kamala Harris's family before I got on here talking. I try to stay away from a lot of that because I need to keep myself focused, right? I appreciate you saying that the Black agenda, is strong, right? If you guys listen to my girl Michi, like her story is very powerful. And quite frankly, Michi is in the middle of her story. She's not out of her story. She has talked about her son on numerous occasions, right? Her son is still in prison right now. That's not a past situation. That is a present day situation. And her story is powerful. Y'all, if you don't know her story, get to know a little bit about her story. Her story is powerful, but she's also still in it. It's still being written. It's still happening, right? And so, but I also appreciate that. The Black Business Initiative, BBI, I have a mission, I have a purpose, I have a vision, and I can't allow myself to always be sidetracked with those things. Y'all don't see the news and the media as being like something that really sidetracks us and takes us off course. You know how many things are getting passed back door, things that happen on the back end because they got us focused in on this little petty bullshit, right? It's very interesting. It's a very it's a diversive tactic, right? It's like the magic trick. You're looking at this hand and I'm over here doing something with this hand you don't even see, right? And so the news and the media is very interesting. Hollywood definitely plays into that, right? Are we going to get our equality? We are going to get our equality. Never doubt that. Listen, I just think it's a matter of time. Even then, and I'm actually close out on this and just put this into perspective, you guys. Like even then, let's remember that America is 400 years, 500 years old, roughly, right? I mean, America is not an old country at all, right? It's not an old country. And we have, if you go back and do, and I'm not a historian, so let me not profess to be a historian, but if you go back and begin to study the rise and fall of other countries, empires, you have had empires that have reigned for 800 years, 1,000 years, right? You've had long-standing empires. America has definitely not figured out how to shield itself from the fall of an empire. I would be willing to say America's probably on its way down, because poor white people, middle class white people, they're tired already. And I always say, when America has a cold, like, black people is damn near dead, right? And so we have to recognize that the power is in our unity. That's really where it is. And we can't be unified when we are practicing anti-Blackness in this way, where we are calling each other out and belittling our experiences, belittling who we are, our identity, our connection, and our acceptance to our own community based off of basic features, right? We can call each other out on policy, right? You can say, you can talk about policy, you can talk about beliefs that are by and large harmful to our community. There's a lot of places and things that you can do and call each other out on, but in correction, right? Because y'all know I'm not for the call out culture. Personally, I don't like the call out culture. I don't think that it's helpful. But if you're going to call out, start to find a way to call out in love, because you all know, if somebody were to come and tell you, oh, you're a coon, you're this, you're that. Somebody just tried, I think when we were talking about toxic femininity, somebody tried to tell me my dad was a loser. I was like, bitch, please, you don't know my fucking dad. Like, we just call out, right? We call out in ridiculous ways without ever having that one-on-one conversation, or having that conversation in love. And even recognizing that sometimes those conversations are not well received. Sometimes those conversations are not well received. But I know when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you out of love. That's the best I can do, is I can try and correct in love, right? I can try and show you how what you're doing is harmful to yourself, or how what you're doing is harmful to others in our community. And then going forward, I have to then decide how I'm going to deal with you. How am I going to interact with you? Am I going to interact with you? Right? So we have to begin to recognize and name anti-Blackness when we see it in ourselves, and recognize when we do that. And there's so many other ways. I talked about colorism, experiences, acceptance, and the polarizing effect of ADOS, even though it's not designed to be polarizing, but the polarizing effect of ADOS. But there are so many other ways. We could talk about anti-Blackness in business practices. We could talk about anti-Blackness in housing. We could talk about anti-Blackness in education, right? That comes from other Black people. That comes from other Black people. So we have to see that anti-Blackness, name it, and correct it in love, and work to move on, so that we can get to that place of unity. Not that fake unity, just that place of unity where, when these things count, when it comes to our children, when it comes to our money, when it comes to our ability to sustain ourselves, when it comes to our ability to govern ourselves, when it comes to, tearing down the education system, and tearing down the criminal justice system as it stands today, tearing down these structures, those are the places that it counts. And those are the places we have to come together. So hopefully that helps somebody today. I'm going to give y'all my plugs again. Make sure y'all go over to the BlackAgendaOnTour.com. We're coming to Chicago, y'all. For those of you who are in Denver, thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing out. I literally had such a great time. The feedback has been phenomenal. Phenomenal. Like, I'm getting calls, text messages. All of that has come from the Black Agenda from this past weekend, and I'm just elated with all of the feedback. It has just been so positive, and my hope is that that positivity continues into taking those tangibles and actually putting them into place. Don't forget to text Black Agenda to 484848 to stay up to date. Make sure that you go ahead and take care of that. Thank you, sis, for always dropping my links in there. Yes, my podcast is up and it's out, you guys. That happens on Wednesday. Definitely head over to Patreon at Grind with Jice. Again, a shout out to Edward Williams. That's my newest top tier member. But make sure that you connect with me, and I will be back on Thursday. All right, y'all. Peace.